So good morning, everybody. A little bit of a different week this week with our webinar. We don't have our usual co-host Paulina here. She's off in Europe on holidays, but we're luckily enough to be joined by a very, very special guest, Kathryn Williams. Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, how are you going, Paddy? Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Really well. No worries. Thanks for agreeing to tune in and help out. For those of you who don't know Kathryn, she is a finance guru, an experienced business consultant. She's worked with peak industry bodies and creative agencies in consulting and advisory capacities, also offering mentorship, holding keynote lectures, and facilitating workshops in these areas. So it's fair to say, I think, that the topic of today, Money Talks, Kathryn knows what she's talking about, and we're so lucky to have been offered the opportunity to throw a few questions at Kathryn today, pick her brains, and have her share that information with you. So we're really lucky. And as we progress throughout the session today, guys, please drop in questions into that chat bubble. Also, please introduce yourselves. Let us know who you are. We love getting personal understanding who's tuning in. And we're going to have some time for some audience questions at the end, specifically for Kathryn. So thanks again, Kathryn, for helping out. So did you have anything that you wanted to add, Kathryn, before we kick things off?
No, I'm just also mutually grateful for being on the webinar, and I can see the chat screen to see everyone logging in. So hi, Bron from Benny Creative and etc. Kylie and Studio Round is there as well. Fantastic. Great opportunity for everyone to get their thoughts and questions answered.
In one place, totally.
Yeah, so thank you for facilitating it. It's great.
No, thank you. I did actually attend one of your workshops last week, Kathryn, which was fantastic. It was called Rate Card, and from that, I actually was able to develop a few questions myself that I'm going to pick at you today that we can share with everyone, because it was so insightful. But the first time we met was actually a few months ago, earlier this year. You came into our Streamtime office to actually have a chat with us all, to pass on information that we can then pass on to our clients, in terms of running studios, running jobs, what people should be looking out for, and getting some really strong advice to them. And so that was really awesome, because it just created a nice sharing environment, and we've been able to share that with our clients since then, and that has absolutely resulted in stronger performance on their behalf, which is great too. So it's nice to come full circle and cut out the middleman and have you here, our Streamtime users today. But kicking off, there are a few different topics that we'll be covering today. We'll be talking about fees, costs, project planning, and we'll touch on reporting at the end as well. And we'll try and cut through these areas. We've got quite a few questions lined up. But kicking off with fees, Kathryn, starting quite broadly, let's think about running a business. How often should we be reviewing our rates that we're selling to our clients? And
every year. It constantly surprises me, Paddy, when I meet agencies, and I was running rate cards this morning actually in Melbourne, full house, and there were several people at the end of the session said they hadn't reviewed their rates for many years, and that comes into play when you're working across multiple client rate cards.
Yep.
And maybe you've got some legacy clients and they've been on the same rates for a decade. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, your costs are going up. You might have moved office, you've bought more staff, your staff are getting salary increases, you might be bonusing them. You really do need to at least CPI increase. And my recommended time is a great blog article that I wrote about when to do it. It would be around Christmas time, New Year. Okay. So rather than financial year, I would recommend doing it in January. Change of the calendar year, that's when most prices go up, I guess, commercially. Yeah. And it's also a quieter period in January, February, certainly in Australia and New Zealand, because it's our summer holidays. So the volume of work's a little lower. So the impact of any increase is not felt as much as there's less work being attended to. Okay. You can kind of tell your clients or advise them before Christmas, October, November, and sometimes they just forget. Over that time, it's sort of like, oh, that's right. They said in October the rates would take effect 1st of January. You could also use that as leverage for old clients moving them to the new rates on retainer options. So if you lock in at this year's rates before we increase in January, perhaps we could sign up a campaign using 2019 rates rather than moving you to 2020 rates. So it gives you an opportunity to negotiate with a difficult client or one you're a bit scared to talk to about.
Yeah. And if you haven't, maybe there are some people here today, similar to those that you chatted with this morning, that haven't, reviewed their rates in a while. What might be a good way to kind of approach that in terms of thinking how much is a fair amount to be improving your rates, or considering doing that at this point in the year, especially if that hasn't been a trend that you've been?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and I treat every client differently, because the agencies will know their clients quite well and what the client will be able to tolerate and not. So I'd probably start with a grid. I'd list all my clients down on the left, and then I would indicate how much I'm wanting to increase their current rates. So just show what that increase would be. And maybe I'd be saying it's a 5% increase or a 10% increase or a 2% increase, and just seeing what it looks like on a grid to get closer and closer to what I actually need to charge based on my costs. So you have to know your costs as well. And then I would approach client a stepping stone at a time. So perhaps you might even look at a homogenized or a blended rate that might help as a different type of offer. So I'd run it as a little project that you're going to work with your team to maybe over the next 6 months move your clients, or January 1, you're going to move all your clients from this position to the new desired position. And over 2 or 3 years, you might move some of the more difficult ones. Yeah. If not, then it's probably time to let them out the back door. Unless there is a really compelling reason that you and your staff want to be working on a client that's not profitable, you can't have them all not profitable. So it's a refreshing exercise to do, and one door closes, another one will open. You can't work on new business if you're still working on busy old clients that are on low rates.
Absolutely. And there is, I've heard, this equation tossed around before. It's like a third of the work you should be doing is work that you need to do. A third of the work you should be doing is the work that you want to do. And a third of the work you should be doing is, it's kind of divvied up into thirds in terms of work that you love, work that you don't really love that you have to do, and work that's kind of just fine.
Well, the savvy business owners that I work with are ensuring that all clients are profitable. They might have a couple of select charitable or pro bono ones, but they know very clearly the limit that they have there. And they're quite shrewd on moving from one pond to the next pond to the next pond. Right. As they grow as a service and confidence, that they move into different realms. And there is always a smaller business that has lower costs that can take on those lower sell rates.
Okay, so it's important about knowing where to draw that line when it comes to those.
Yeah, it is. If you're talking about it, then there's obviously a problem. So work with your team and grab an expert outside to give you some objectivity and make a plan.
Yeah, and this kind of is a good lead into the next question that I had, which is around clients and maybe having some different rates for different clients, and thinking about, do you think that that's a good idea? Even when you're presenting to a client, are there multiple rates that you should present?
Yes.
And what do you have some thoughts about this?
I do. So I guess we're talking about hourly rates. So my first reasoning is you don't want too many rate cards, and really you've got a pure cost that shouldn't change. This is what it costs to run my business. So now I'm selling at a sell rate. So what is that rate? It's got to be higher than my cost. It's got to deliver the profit that I would like for my business. So that would be my standard sell rate card for this year. Yeah. Unless something significant changes in your business, that should last you a full year, and then you would redo it and increase your rates in January. So we've probably just done all our budgeting for this financial year. Australia fiscal year ends in July, so we're just starting this year more or less. Mm-hmm. So we've already set the budget. One would think you increase your rates now, but it makes sense to do them in January for the reasons I have said. You can play with that. If you have a value-based pricing model, you might not be looking so much at the sell rates based on the hourly rate. You might be looking more on selling to the value of the client. So what is it you're delivering to the client, and is it worth more? In which case you're value-based pricing, not just setting a standard hourly rate. Mm-hmm. So this is not a new topic. It's been around for many years. It's a difficult one because it's very subjective. And it's only the agencies that are quite confident in knowing how many hours and what it takes to deliver to the client, what are the deliverables, that these confident agencies are able to then price based on delivery, not necessarily the cost it took to do the work.
Absolutely.
So you might have a different model for those sorts of clients. So it could be a different rate card based on deliverables. And this is taking into account bundling and I guess the volume pricing as well.
Mm-hmm. And what's the key thing there? If some agencies are better at doing it than others, it might be a confidence thing, but would you say that the way that that's communicated with the client plays a big role in terms of how that's received and how that's responded to?
Yeah, intelligence and knowledge is power. So if the agency understands their cost base and understands what their pricing model is, you're in a much better decision-making power place because you know how much is profit. So you can straight away say, I'm making $50 or $100 an hour in profit on this resource and $200 an hour on this resource.
Yeah.
So I'm in a much stronger negotiating position, and I can create a strategic approach to offer to my clients. I can also see that I have a certain group of people on my team that are very efficient, slick at what they do, so they can get things done quickly, but I can still price it at a premium because it's worth more to my client. So I'm getting into I guess, a value mindset rather than the costs and the benchmarks. Conversely, I might have people that are slower in my team, but they might be cheaper because they're just not as experienced. So it might end up being the same, but I still understand the value of what we're delivering to the client. So I'm still looking more at valuing the client, not the work, the hours that are done. So it's when the business owner, usually it comes from the top, and it directs the agency that we are going to do this. We are going to look at moving some of our clients, these three, onto a value price or offer that as a solution opposed to the hourly rate. But you need to create that program internally and then roll it to FMCG clients or to charity clients, or just pick a sector or just pick one client. You really need to just have a theory as to how you're going to roll it out into your business and put it in play.
Yeah. And in your experience, having seen, people that you've worked with implementing such ways of pricing and selling their work, how successful across the board have they been in doing that? There's
not many. So a lot want to do it. They haven't all been successful in doing it. And I think it probably would be, it takes a while to get your package right, so that you know that your income is going to be scaled up. If you're more successful, the return is higher. So there might be a sliding scale for the client to pay. So that takes a lot of confidence and belief in the client, access sometimes to the client's data. So if you don't have that, then it's difficult for you to implement. So that will stop an agency from employing that mode. Alternatively, it is just bundled pricing. So I'm going to produce this output. I know how much it costs me internally, and I know what my profit margin is, and that's the fixed price. So each time you buy one of those, that's the price. So we're looking at kind of productizing what we do. That's a lot easier. Works really well in design studios, and I've seen that very successfully worked across pack studios that are doing development on different SKUs, and they've got fixed prices. The clients can then buy advertising as well, TVCs, and other types of businesses that might have a premium package, a mid-weight, and then a basic pack. Web design word as well. You've got your whistles and bells, shopping carts, and data collector, or basic, just a couple of pages on a website. So they're all fixed prices, and then I get to play in the background with which resources to fit those different price points for the client.
Awesome. And the key metric here is profit that we're talking about when it comes to why we're doing this, and even establishing that confidence to deliver it. You said before is being smart and confident in terms of what your profit is and knowing your business model first. So when we're talking about profit, what are the most key things that we need to be thinking about when we're starting out in a studio to ensure that we're making profit? What do we need to be looking at?
Right, so startups, and really it doesn't matter whether you've got 5 partners that put some money in and you're starting together, or if you're a sole trader starting up, you absolutely need to know what's going to cost you to run your business. Whether you're at home or whether you're in a service suites with fixed desk costs, or you've bought some space, you've got that pretty straightforward. It's stuff you can touch: your computer, your chair, your mouse, your coffee cup. Don't underrate yourself as the business owner. What would you be earning commercially? If it's $200,000 of salary, put it in your budget. If it's $100,000 for salary, put it in your budget. If it is not there, you're going to miss out. It's quite simple. It doesn't mean you have to pay yourself, but put it in your budget to start setting up your target. Then the profit component is on top of that. So all businesses, whether you're a sole trader or not, should be looking to deliver a profit. The reason you're delivering the profit is so you can invest back in the business. So you've got some money for a rainy day. some savings, or you're looking to save up for something, you want to buy the apartment you're in at home, or you want to buy some office space rather than leasing. And if you're clever, you'll lease it back to yourself. So you'll buy it out in another business that you own that you've been saving for.
Yeah.
This is where I like to work more with the tax accountants as well, because you want to make sure that you are not paying too much tax that you'll never see again. Although if you make a profit, do you make a tax? You have to pay it. But are there clever ways to actually reinvest that into your business through your people, rewarding them, training them, so setting up the building blocks. So if you do the budget keynote, it's Lego. You've got your people, you've got your overheads, you've got your provisions. If you're going to pay tax on profit, that's a provision. If you owe something or if you're saving, and then you've got your profit target. Get all those blocks together, and then with that, you've kind of got your true cost base. You can work out your cost per hour that goes into your job management system, like Streamtime.
Yeah.
And then your sale price has to be higher. The sale price has to be higher. If it's not, we've got some problems, and it'll come into productivity territory then, because not everyone's fully billable. So it's not every hour of cost is matched with the same dollar income in sell price, and that's the game.
And you did talk a bit about this last week at your rate card keynote that I attended. And one thing that you kept stressing as well was just to be honest about these figures. There's no point putting them in a system if you're not going to be honest about what they are when it comes to those costs. And even, the time of productivity, like really once you take away the time of the day that those team members are going to be in the office or actually sitting at their desk working on billable work, those figures all of a sudden just become distorted.
You're right, Paddy. It actually has to be the real truth. And no matter how ugly the truth is, for me, the worse it is, as a starting point for me, the worse it is, the better, because the only way is up. So I usually start with productivity. What would you like as a target? And then what's actually happening. So if you are using Streamtime, you can see very clearly, and any of these programs will tell, even if you're using Excel spreadsheets, how much time was billable. Did you bill it is another question. How much time was recorders working on clients' billable work, and how much time was working on non-billable work, stuff in the agency, chatting in the kitchen, researching, attending networking events, not billable. So what is it for seniors? What is it for midweights? And what is it for juniors? Just go with 3 simple bands. Usually the higher up the tree you are, potentially you're working mostly on new business and running the studio or running the business. So you could be a very high non-billable component. And that sometimes works with the juniors as well. Not so much these days. I mean, back in the old day, we'd have a lot of juniors that were just not billable on anything. They'd be doing newspaper runs, picking up dry cleaning, taking dogs for a walk. That doesn't really happen as much these days. There tends to be hands on the tools and working. But their billability in the first 3-month probation might be quite low because they're learning, you're training them, and then maybe you want to review what their productivity should be. So by second quarter, they should be probably closer to 50%. Third quarter, they definitely should be closer to 70, 80%. And the middle band, the worker bees, unless they're attending all of the meetings to hear all of the stuff, they should just be working. And they should be very clear on what the remit is. This is where retainers are great because they know what they're doing for the retention, for that committed time. Projects, again, I'd go on a different pricing structure for projects because you've got to learn it all right now, do it all now, you're on the job and then it's done. So you don't have the luxury of clarity for a longer period of time. You have to really jump in. So the billing for that phase has to be very high. You can't be doing non-billable in that space because you're not going to have time to recoup it. So being clear on a target for those 3 bands, and then from your job management system, seeing what's really happening. And they're invariably, it's rare that I'll find an agency that are all actually recording billable time around these 75, 80% mark. It's sadly, I mostly see it's 50% and lower, some in the 60s, but a lot of them are very low. And it's because we actually don't have the work in, or we're doing a lot of stuff manually. And I'd really like to see what that is, because we don't want our special people that have come with skills to be doing spreadsheets or to be doing things manually, which perhaps we could outsource to a VA, or we could automate it by using the right systems. So polarizing on that productivity, because it does impact your cost and your sell rates radically.
And when it comes to non-billable and billable time, the distinctions for you are quite clear between those two things, right? in terms of how we track time as non-billable time or billable time. And I think last week you mentioned if you're in a meeting that's about a client, even if it's an internal meeting, that's time spent on the client thinking about their strategy and their work, and that time should very much be tracked against their job, even if the outcome isn't so visible. It's time and investment in that process, in the concept development or the design, that's going to attribute to the final product that will be adding that value to the job at the end of the day.
Totally agree. We'll stay with that example where you are actually speaking about one client. It might be a difficult client, might be a difficult product or service they sell. It might be really hard because they haven't given you a proper brief, or they might have 5 of them muddying the waters or asking for different things, so it's a bit confusing, the brief's not clear. So you might find that you need more of your people in this meeting, and you need more meetings to try and unravel their mess. And this technically in an agency becomes allocated time to a job, but perhaps not billable, or it is on the billable jobs and it's blowing you out as an overrun. I'd like to raise my hand here and say management consultants would never do anything like that for free. If the client hasn't given you a brief, they are now asking you, because you're the experts. Now, a management consultant will charge by the hour to help the client understand what the brief is. I know this is a bit rad in the industry as well, because we tend to just do it for free. That's the way it's always been done.
Yes.
But again, this is where a confident business owner will start to see opportunity and value-base the client. If the client is a mess and doesn't know, and we know because we're the experts and we've worked with many people like this client, we know how to streamline it for them. We know how to get the brief. Now you need to consult with them to understand, well, there's option A, there's option B, and there's option C. Dress it up with a nice bow. Here's the diagnosis, and here's the way we would recommend you move forward. But you're actually consulting with them rather than just taking the brief and hoping with all these meetings that you're having that it's technically billable but not billable time. It's showing in your job management system how labor intensive it is on this client. It's also showing that you're not billing. So only you can change that. It's your business. So make the decision. Are you giving it all away for free, or is the strategic and the creative thinking valuable to you and you should be selling it?
Yes.
Some client, it is communicating correctly to client and right from the outset. So it will be hard if you've got clients that are just used to getting you into their office to have all these meetings. They're on the payroll. Yes. You're not.
Yes.
So you might be able to bill in that time, and you might just want to take one person from the office, not 3. But just starting to be a bit aware. And I'm pretty sure most of the people on this webinar go, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
This will resonate with you. It's just you need to work out how you're going to play the game. The minute it doesn't feel quite right anymore,
yes.
That's the first sign that you need to move that needle a little bit in your favour.
Yeah.
And that's where an external consultant can help you, because we know how to do it. We've seen it happen very easily for some, others it takes a little longer.
Yeah.
But generally the time should go on the client job. You can have a non-billable task in the client's remit, so it still goes under the client to show me the total my team has invested on this client, and the non-billable component can be there, rather than putting on house or internal non-billable, just an admin dumping ground. And notes are also quite useful as to why you were at those meetings.
Yes. No, of course. Well, I mean, by doing that, you're going to be able to understand the cost spent on that particular job with that particular client, which you wouldn't get otherwise. It's going to get lost. And you're also going to be able to gauge how much that work was potentially sellable for, right?
Yes.
So it's always good to understand in terms of, coming from value, what that time was really worth. And talking about billing and actually getting, money in from the client, getting clients to pay on time.
I'm really good at that.
What's this?
Everybody listening on this webinar, you may have thought this one day. Some of you will already be doing it. Don't start work till they pay. It's quite simple. So when you have a prospect and they go, oh, we love what you've got, we want to start work with you now, the first thing you should do is say, that's fine, I'll send you my terms and conditions and my commencement fee. That's absolutely fundamental, and we will start work when that is paid. Everybody knows you can get on your phone now, just reaching for my device. I'm going to transfer some money across to your account now. Even if they have a procurement or accounts payable in India or wherever they are these days, if they want to pay something and get started, they can make it happen.
Yeah.
If they can't, you start to learn right from the get-go that there's layers behind them that you've got to get through, like barbed wire. There'll be a purchase order that somebody else needs to raise. It might be more than this person has authority to sign off. You'll start to understand the process behind. So as much as I really want to get started on this job and they're telling me there's a deadline, I can't start until I get money in the bank. And I'd rather that than a signed contract if that's got to go through legal. So again, there are some tactics around this to just get the game in your favour right from the get-go while the iron is hot and they want to start, get it happening. Retainer clients always get the client to pay on the first day of the month to which that retainer relates. So we're about to hit September. All September fee invoices should be paid by the 1st.
Perfect.
Which is Sunday, I think.
Yes.
So then the money's in my bank and I can pay my staff. And if it's not in my bank, I'm now going to have to use my own money to pay my staff, and I'm going to have to use my time to chase the client. So swing it round and get your T's and C's so they reflect what you need.
If your strategy behind retainer work is to benefit cash flow as well, then what's the point if you don't have that cash in the door?
And it could be 60 days before you even know they haven't paid the September one, because it's just the timing. So get really polarized on that. And the 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever these days are, who cares? You run your own business the way you want it to run. You can discuss it and negotiate it with your client. Certainly the larger ones, it is a lot harder, so I'm not demeaning that. It is trickier because there are layers and barbed wire you've got to get through. So go and meet the finance, in your onboarding, meet the finance director, get that person in the room. If there's procurement, be there with them, try and bring your counterpart and make sure you get that really clean so that you don't have to worry about it. And you can't have all clients on 120 days, God forbid. It just isn't right. So try and change it up a bit.
Do you have a recommended payment terms for, an invoice being issued and paid?
Yes, so 3 standard ones. Commencement fee is due immediately and work doesn't start until that is paid. So if you book me to come and do an agency audit and you don't pay your $4,000 deposit, I'm not coming. I've even booked flights to attend and I've cancelled those flights. If that money is not in the bank and I haven't been compensated, then I'm not coming. It's really hard to do it the first time because you just want to go and do the job and be awesome. But I have to, particularly because I'm the finance guru, I have to lead by example. And I'm also teaching you as your audience, as business owners, I'm teaching you how to be. You have to be like this with your clients too. And sometimes you just have to be a stick in the mud so that somebody has to bow here. And it's not a fair deal if they don't do what they said they'd do. So yes, that's my first one. Commencement fees are due immediately, like overnight, 24 hours. Maybe give them till Friday, but this week. Retainers, you get 15 or 30 days. I don't really mind when that invoice goes, but it's always due on the 1st. So I can invoice on the 15th of the previous month or on the 1st of the previous month. It's always due on the 1st. And the payment table says so. And reimbursements tend to be 7 days after the event because the expenses happened in the month. At the end of the month, my bookkeeper's putting it all together to raise that invoice by day 1 or 2. And then probably 7 days later, so you get a good week, including the weekend, to pay. But I spent the money a whole month ago. It is cash flow in my head, but I don't know what that is until the end of the month. So those are why the reimbursements are a little bit lagging.
Gotcha.
Another one would be if you've got suppliers, you have to get the money up front from your client. So as soon as the client agrees to spend the money for the printing or the photographer or the floral arrangement, out goes the invoice. I'm happy if it's installments, like 25% for the event or 25% and then 25% or 50% at the end, whatever. But as soon as you've got agreement for those random things, just get that invoice out there, 100%. Pay for the flowers now for the event. And might mean a little bit more invoicing, but it just gets the money in your bank before your supplier sends in their invoice for the photography or flowers or whatever it might be.
Yeah, great advice. Thinking about profit, what costs tend to be most overseen when thinking about generating profit and absorbing those into your cost rates?
The profit figure itself.
Yes.
So if you don't budget for profit, there will be none. It might be random. So I like to include in my job management systems the wage component, the overhead component, and also profit. I believe that you will have sell prices that are still higher than those 3 if your productivity levels are right. So if you can, then it's a foolproof system for your team as well, because when they call a job cost report, it will always show a positive because the cost is less than the sell price. But whatever you see as a positive, you just know that's clear profit because you'd already factored a little bit into your cost rates. So that would be my first thing, to factor some profit in. The second thing that's sometimes missed would be on balance sheet. So on the balance sheet items, business owners forget, or don't want to remember, there might be a tax debt to pay, or perhaps they're behind in paying some loans back, or maybe they personally put money into the business owes them that money. You need to set your revenue and GP target for this year enough to cover those, or to repay. You'll never see it on the P&L because it doesn't sit there, it lives on the balance sheet. But if we generate revenue enough to pay those loans back, then it's part of your cost base, which is allocated across your team, like rent or an overhead. So that would be, it's the tax one that's usually the killer. And it takes a couple of years for that to actually really bite. The first year you make a profit. At the end of the year, you know you've made a profit, and your tax advisor will say, well, we won't lodge your tax return until March next year. So you've nearly got a whole year to worry about paying for the tax this year. The problem is, during this second year, you're actually still making good profit. And now you've got the first year tax to pay and tax on the second year. And it's like a double whammy, and you can die overnight. It just is like such a strangler. So I really think if you're going to put a profit target in, 200,000, $500,000, whatever you want, that you need to factor into your GP and revenue, and therefore over your costs, as if it's an overhead, the tax that would be payable on that. So it's also in there. So they're probably the things that are missed, that really make a strong agency, that you know you've got everything in that cost rate and your sell rate is still higher. So if it's not, we need to look at it. You could be top heavy with people, or you're underselling yourself on the price. And we need to look at your strategy to make sure you can survive.
Yeah, awesome. Moving on to planning. Can you tell us a bit about how most agencies are planning their projects? Do you think a more detailed plan is going to be best, or a more broad plan?
Planning their projects, so planning the costings.
Planning the costings and the work that needs to get done, the different components and deliverables.
Yeah.
Essentially, I'm trying to understand if working towards a more granular plan is going to provide more digestible chunks of work that my team can then track and me with a healthier report at the end of the day.
So I look at two things: one client facing, one internal. So the client facing, keep it simple. If there are 3 phases, it's phase 1, 2, 3, this figure, this figure, this figure total. The more detail you give on the face of an estimate and an invoice, the more the client feels obliged almost to nitpick and tell you how you should run your business. So the less detail there, the better. Never disclose a markup. Again, it's really not the client's business what your markup is. I'm quite certain you wouldn't have a clue what their markups are, nor would their customers. I don't know how much the markup was for my jumper. I have no clue what the markups are for my glasses. It's just not something that is usually disclosed. There is an opportunity in terms and conditions if you do have a markup component to put that in your T&Cs, but generally speaking, it's not disclosed. So from a client's perspective, again, I would never go to that granular level. I certainly would try and minimize the number of hours and types of services for our people, because the clients will again try, not all of them, but some of them will look and say, oh, I don't think I need Kathryn for that many hours. And so a bulk figure on the client-facing invoice is best. However, from an internal perspective, our team need to know what am I working on, and all of our programs work on timesheet drop-down menus. I'm going to pick my client, I'm going to pick my task. So if my task is not there, it makes it really hard for me to put my time. I can put in phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, but for us as a business to see where we're really efficient or where we're not so efficient and we need to train people, or we've got the wrong people, or we've got seniors jumping in doing junior sell rates, then you need that granular level. So I think internally our programs manage that very well to show how many hours we've allocated to each resource to do the job. And if a senior jumps in on a junior job because we needed to, then it's going to impact, and we'll see which line and why. And over time, I'm big on patterns. You actually start to see some patterns, and it will help you make better decisions from a granular level. So that's what I would say. Planning the projects from granularly, Definitely put some buffers in. So if you've got some buffer, just if you don't use it, then you can either refund it to the client or not bill them. You might also have an estimate that is to fit the client's budget, but that's not what it's going to take. It's going to take you more time. So you might be actually scheduling more time. So agreeing what that is, and maybe the difference is that tolerance at 10% more. Perhaps it's an award-winning piece of work, so you might schedule more or allow a tolerance overrun, but granular with your internal project layouts as to what it's going to take, so you know that we can play. We're really efficient here, but it's high value to the client, so we might be charging more in phase one, which is strategy and creative, and then worker bees, and then some nice to have stuff which might be negotiated away, but you've got the granular level all itemised out.
Right. Gotcha. Being time conscious here, I think you said we could go for about another 10 minutes until 2:45.
Yes, if you like.
That would be great. So let's move into reports before we do decide to wrap things up and take a couple of questions from the crowd. It looks like there are quite a few coming in, which is awesome. So thinking about key reports an agency should always be running might be a simple question, but people might not always be getting this right. What are your suggestions when it comes to understanding the figures?
On the reports?
In reports, what should people be looking for?
Well, which report? So I look at probably three key areas: agency overall, and I just want to know my billings, my externals, my gross profit, my revenue, and is that enough to cover my people and running costs, deliver the profit? That's a straightforward one. That's going to come out of zero most days. From Streamtime reporting sort of programs, I'll be looking at my people efficiencies, which helps me with my productivity. So how much time have they put in? And we're focused on a timesheet model, unless we've moved to complete value-based pricing. We're still people paying by the hour. So I need to see what hours have been put in there. If the timesheets are not in there, then I'm really kind of strict on that. And as hard as it is in every business, we pay our people by the hour. So they are obliged to put their time in so I can see what they're doing. And if they're working on billable work, I might be able to help them by getting an assistant if we need more people. If they're working on non-billable work, I might be able to help them by getting them a new program. So if it's in there, I can see. If it's not in there, I can't see and I can't do anything about it. So a KPI number one requirement, and on appraisals and annual reviews, if you're not doing your timesheet, and I was going to give you a 10 grand pay increase, I'm now not. I'm only going to give you 8 because you didn't do your timesheet. It sounds really easy as I just speak to you on the webinar. I know it's harder when you're dealing with people and you haven't had that process in play before. Again, it's totally up to the business owner to move from what is not happy and not working to something that, where am I, where do I need to be? What do I need to do? So if I need time.
No, sorry, I was going to ask, do you have any tricks or tips or advice when it comes to incentivizing people to do that? Like how do you cross that?
Name and shame. I think it's just an onboarding everybody on board. So there are a couple of times when this works really well. One is when you move to a new system. So if you're implementing a new system, you're spending huge time and resources to find out which one, to implement it, to set it all up, and now use and learn the thing. That's the best opportunity to get everybody to use each section of the program, and one key component is timesheets. And not so much as just filling them in, that's the boring bit, it's what comes out that's really interesting. So Paddy, I see for the month of August, we're in the last week and you've only done week 1. So I need you to get the rest of the time in so that when we meet regularly at the end of the month, as you know, we can talk about what you've worked on, what you haven't worked on, and the new business components. So you make it really personal. That would be my number one opportunity. Number 2 is if you're not changing systems, you've just got the system, just pick a month. End of quarter 1, had enough, we've tried and we tried, now we're going to work together as a team. That's the best way to do it. And use dashboards, do it on screen, get each individual to report on their own. Don't spoon feed them from finance department or bookkeepers or VAs. Make them report on their own. So on Monday, next week, when we're reporting on August, each person around the table will have like a minute or less, just depends how quick they are and efficient, as to what time did you put into the system, what was billable, what was non-billable, and just start very basically and then move around the table. They know that's coming and they know they need to be ready. Remind them on Friday.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, again, it's the leadership style. I'm not trying to play big brother. I just need your time in there so I can make better decisions for everybody, and so can the account managers. The other report, so that was from the people perspective. The other report is from a client profitability perspective. I like to see the client overall with all the jobs underneath. So some jobs are under, some jobs are over, but roll up the client. Is the client overall in profit? And if not, what are our plans for the future work with this client? If they're in a retainer or if there's more projects coming up, what do we need to do to catch up and recoup our losses? So I'd be looking at agency as a whole, by person and by client. They're probably my three main ones.
Awesome, fantastic. And just touching back on what you were saying before about timesheets and how important it is to actually track them and capture them. And the thing is that people are terrible at actually using timesheet software. It's one of the things that we learned when we were building Streamtime. Obviously, we've been around for 17 years. We used to have Streamtime Classic, which is one of those old clunky systems that doesn't work very well when it comes to actually getting people to engage with it to track their time. It's just archaic, and it was built on old software. And we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to redesign Streamtime from the ground up, and the to-do screen and the way we track time.
Amazing. The drag and drop, absolutely. There's really no excuse. If your audience are using Streamtime, there's no excuse. It's amazing. And if you're not using Streamtime, take a look at it. It really is such a great program. It flips everything for you and makes it so much easier.
And thinking about the plan as well, planning out the week ahead of time to actually look at what you've got to do, putting your head up and saying, okay, well, what have I actually got to work on this week? And by getting that blueprint for the week, creating a plan that you can then stick to, it, as you said, it just makes it so much easier to get that time actually into a system in a way where it's functionally linked to the work that you had done, which was your to-do list. So certainly something that we tacked onto when we were conducting that research for the new Streamtime about 3 years ago. So good advice then from you too. So we've only got a few minutes left. So I think I've got one final question to wrap up with you, Kathryn, and it'd be good to, after that, to maybe grab a couple from the audience. But is there any one single thing that you've noticed successful agencies do that others don't?
Yeah, I think they work on the business. The ones that are working on this are the ones that are successful. The other ones that are scurrying around doing the jobs haven't quite got a turnkey process underneath, or they haven't been able to yet transfer the work to their people, that they're still hands-on, which is taking their time. So I think in the early years, that's definitely have to. You're building the business, you're learning what it is your craft is and how it works, so that you can teach others in your business, so you can scale or just be more efficient or just free yourself. The ones that really wins is it's going to be a bit weird, but over the last 16 years of working in Australia, I could tell you probably about 7 or 8 women who have left the business to have a child, baby, and have left the business in the capable hands, or at the time it wasn't capable, it was so nerve-wracking, of number 2. And they've come back after 6 months or a year, and the business has wobbled, but it's still there. But that number 2 resource has really learned what needs to happen. And when the business owner comes back, they're ready again to do what they can do, which is at the Midas touch, turn things to gold and really pick up again. But what they've now got is a business that is working without them. It's probably not as awesome as it could be, but it's definitely working without them. And I would definitely recommend never, never, never go back into hands-on jobs again. Stay out and start focusing on working on the business and grooming your team to do the work, so that you can look at other things, whether that be personal lifestyle stuff, or whether that be networking, or being judges on awards, or writing a book, or whatever it is that you want to do that's going to benefit the business. Stay out, try and stay out, and let your team run that business. So that would be one thing that I see those successful business owners do, that they're not actually hands on the tools anymore. They're allowing their team to get down and dirty and make it happen for them. That's a risky thing, but they're there to catch as a catch net. It definitely works, and create that environment. So regardless if you're not going off to have a baby, don't go off and have a baby, but create that environment that you have allowed them to step up and be very clear about what that leadership program looks like.
Yeah, trust plays a big role in that game, doesn't it?
Yeah. I just wanted a question, Paddy, from Kerry. She read it a little while ago when we were talking about
Yes.
not disclosing markups, and I did want to respond to that. So I believe her lawyer says it's illegal to take commissions or referral fees without disclosing to the client. Commission and referral fees are a little different to a markup. So commission is I get a kickback when I buy bulk media usually, and it used to be very agency got to keep 100% of the commission. The more space you booked, the more commission you got. These days, most agencies I work with will share that with clients, but not all of them. It's stated in the terms and conditions. So it is disclosed that the commission is earned and it's arm's length, and it's as a result of us working with multiple clients. We push a lot of work to the media agency, and buying that space, we are rewarded for it. So we could use lots of different media outlets, but we use a central place and we benefit because of the relationship and the volumes of scale. So it's the benefit for us, but having the client give us the work benefits us as well. So sometimes we might share it back. Referral fees, I don't know. And if I was to, a referral fee I'm interpreting to be, if I gave Paddy a client, Paddy would be awesomely grateful and want to pay me a referral or a thank you back. And I think that's completely fine, because otherwise Paddy would have had to have spent hours out of client money to market and research. And it's more a gratitude, and it doesn't always happen anyway, but it's usually a small thank you. If you're encouraging people with referral fees, I haven't seen that in the sector marcoms for a very long, ever actually. So I'm not really sure that applies here. And the markup and margin is commonplace in all businesses. So it is normal, and it is normal that it's not disclosed in any product or service that I'm aware of. So it's not illegal, it's just not disclosed. PRIA, for example, does, however, in their contracts state the industry average with, I think it's 16%, the 2018 benchmark. Okay. So you can slap that in there and put a specific amount, but you need to review your contract every year because it changes every year. Yes. And then again, it might not be 16% across the board. You might have some markups at 20 and some at 10, I don't know. Yes. So not looking here, I'm certainly not advocating anything illegal. It's fair and just commercial business then.
Good to get some clarity around that one.
Yeah.
Tom had a great question asking about when quoting for a new project, would you recommend quoting for the strategy and the brief first so that you can actually sit down with the client and work out what's required before quoting for the entire project? And
yeah, lovely. That's the consultancy mindset. And I did see some feedback earlier on one of the questions about reverse brief and charging the client for that if they're messy and they haven't got it together. That's completely fine, but then we're not an agency anymore. We're actually working in this environment of consulting and using all of our expertise and professional knowledge to assist the client define the brief. It is the most valuable component at the beginning. If the client is not organised and professional, if they don't have it sewn up nicely, we are giving them a strategic approach. We are talking to them about media plans. We are talking to them about the creative linchpin. So those components are highly valuable. So if you're going to just sit there and talk about it for free and the client can go somewhere else with all that new knowledge, well, that's a bit foolish. So it is your most valuable asset, that intellectual property. So I would be charging for the meeting. Most agencies would call it discovery or research and development or consultancy. And there's a fixed fee for it with an agenda of what you're going to cover. They will come to the party with what you need. You will come already with your expected, what you need to know. Out of that, you can create a product, which is a diagnostic report or a campaign brief or it's a brief, but it might be something a little bit more formal. They could take this document to any other agency. So it needs to be that descriptive that, you know, they can buy it and keep it and do it themselves if they want. That's their choice. Or they would most likely then stay with you. And then you will execute it and you'll charge them for the work that your studio or agency participates in. So those first two pieces are probably two new service streams that you didn't have before. You might have just been hoping you'll cover it when you actually get the brief finalised and do the work. So you could be earning easily, you know, $10,000, $20,000 more just for these two pieces to get it right. And if the client needs to fine tune it, then we'll have another meeting and that'll be another consultancy fee until they get it right. So it is a little unusual to do multiple of these, but not unusual at all to do the consultancy and the diagnostic report.
Great answer. And there's so much more in there that I really want to keep diving into, but thinking about time, we probably can't. There's one more last question from Emily, which I'm sure you'll be able to answer in about 10 seconds there, Kathryn. How often do you recommend running staff efficiency and productivity reports?
Oh, every month? Yeah, so depending on the program, I've been looking at what it is every month. So I'm doing it once a year to set my targets and work out my cost rates. And I'm using last year's data for that. What was our true efficiency or productivity? And then each month I'm running it every month. It's a KPI in most agencies I work with.
All right, well, let's wrap it there. Thank you so much, Kathryn. I don't want to hold you any longer, but thank you so much for tuning into this and offering such great, valuable advice to
all these people saying thank you. How polite is this? This is lovely.
Everyone's been pretty quiet the whole time up until now, so everyone's been really attentive, which is awesome.
Really great. Thank you.
And if anyone is keen to find out more about Kathryn, you can find her at her website, kmint.com.au. That is the name of her consulting business. I will throw it in the chat there so that you can link out to it. If you want to get in touch with Kathryn, you can send her an email. I believe there is a 30-minute free consultation that you can take up with Kathryn. You can claim that via email. Is that correct?
That's right. Just drop me a line and we'll pick a time and just have a chat for 30 minutes and see what you need, and might be enough. Just if you've got, I saw a couple of questions about pitching for free and stuff like that, we can knock that over. I'm happy to help like that. And when you get something, a big fish, then I'll jump in, and that can be a paid consultancy gig.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kathryn, once again. And I'll chat to you soon.
Indeed. Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.
See you later, everybody.